since your firing, have you done some soul searching? Have you done some self-reflection? And have you looked at the way you treated women that you think now or think about differently now than you did at the time?
This wasn't supposed to happen. Matt Lauer was one of the most trusted faces on TV, earning $25 million a year on NBC's Today Show and waking up millions every morning. Then, with a secret button hidden under his desk, everything changed. One complaint, and within 24 hours, he was fired, banned, and gone. But that was only the beginning. More shocking details started to come out. Multiple victims, hidden actions, multiple accusations, and stories from years back. The man everyone trusted disappeared overnight. So what really happened to Matt Lauer after he was fired? And where is he now? Let's uncover the truth. The secret button that started it all. Matt Lauer hosted the Today Show for more than 2 decades before he was fired following a series of events. Nobody saw it coming, and that is the truth. He was warm, charming, and professional. The kind of man you trusted with your morning coffee. However, Matt was fired in 2017 after a colleague came forward with a complaint. The name behind that complaint was Brooke Neville's. She accused Lauer of gross misconduct during a work trip to Russia, where the team had traveled to cover the Winter Olympics in 2014. According to her, what happened in that hotel room was not consensual. That claim alone was enough to end his career. But Lauer strongly denied that version. In his response, he said they had engaged in multiple intimate acts and insisted everything that happened was mutual. He described it as a consensual encounter. At this point, this was 2 completely different accounts of the same moment. One said it was done willingly with consent. The other said it was not done with consent. And that is where things became complicated because the case was not decided in a courtroom. It was decided by public opinion, and public opinion was already shifting fast. While that single complaint triggered his firing, it did not stay alone for long. Within a short time, more women began to speak, giving details of specific experiences at different times, but with similar patterns. A major investigation by a media outlet dug deeper. They spoke to current and former employees. What came out was not one story. There were many. One woman said he gave her an intimate toy as a gift, along with a note explaining how to use it. Another said he exposed himself during a workday interaction. Others described inappropriate comments, constant pressure, and moments that crossed clear boundaries. Matt Lauer finally spoke, but by then, the damage was already done. He mentioned that there are no words to express his sorrow in a statement released after his firing. He admitted he had caused pain through his actions. He said he was ashamed and that he regretted what had happened. But even in that apology, there was a shift. He also claimed that some of the stories about him were not accurate. Not completely false, but not entirely true either. That detail mattered because by the time he spoke, the story was no longer one accusation. It had already become a pattern. Then came one of the most disturbing details. Inside his office, there was a button under his desk. A small switch that could lock the door from the inside, but from the outside, no one could tell. The network later said it was a standard security feature. But several women described how that button changed the situation. It meant once the door closed, they were alone, and control had shifted. That detail turned suspicion into something heavier because it suggested planning, not something that happened by mistake. And it made people ask a harder question. How long had this been happening? One former Today Show producer described being called in by Matt during a regular workday as far back as 2001. She walked in and heard the lock. She said he told her to unbutton her blouse and did all sorts to her to the point that she passed out during the incident and woke up on the floor. At that time, his assistant had to take her to a nurse, although while all of these were happening, she never reported it. She was afraid that he was too powerful, and that fear is exactly what kept this going for so long. That fear became part of the story as multiple women said the same thing in different ways. He was too powerful and highly placed. As such, his position made it risky to speak. The fear of losing a job, being ignored, or being pushed out kept people silent. So the silence lasted until the complaint finally reached the network in 2017. The response was immediate. Matt was immediately fired without any farewell episode, message, or celebration of his long career. Just an announcement. The network believed the situation was serious enough to act without delay. They also made another decision that stood out. They refused to pay him the rest of his contract. He had been earning around $20 million a year, but after the firing, he received nothing more. That kind of termination only happens when a company decides the behavior crossed a line that cannot be repaired. But even then, questions remained. Some people began asking whether the network truly did not know before that moment. Reports suggested that concerns about his behavior had existed for years. Some employees claimed complaints had been raised quietly, but were never taken up. Although the network denied that, they said this was the first formal complaint that reached a level requiring action. But here's where there was some sort of confusion and doubt: the timing. The investigation by the media outlet had already been underway before his firing. Interviews had been conducted, stories had been collected, and the information was building. Then both events collided at once. The firing became public, the investigation was published, and suddenly everything came out together. That is when the story shifted from one man to a larger issue about workplace culture, power, who gets protected, and who gets ignored. Especially since this was happening inside one of the most watched television studios in America. But none of this happens overnight. A pattern this deep, hidden this long, does not appear from nowhere. So who exactly was Matt Lauer before any of this? And what built the man America never really knew? The man behind the smile. Who Matt Lauer really was. When Matt Lauer became co-anchor of the Today Show in January 1997, the show was losing. Good Morning America had been pulling viewers away, and NBC needed something to change the tide. Lauer was that change. He brought warmth to a format that had felt stiff for years. He made the show feel like a conversation rather than a broadcast. Viewers responded immediately, and that first week as co-anchor produced the second highest ratings in the show's history up to that point. NBC had found its man. His chemistry with co-host Katie Couric was electric. She later admitted she had a crush on him when he was still doing local news. On screen, they teased each other, laughed together, and sometimes finished each other's sentences. Viewers felt it. The show stopped feeling like news and started feeling like something you actually looked forward to in the morning. He was not just doing morning fluff either. When the Oklahoma City unfortunate event happened in April 1995, Lauer was part of the team that had to shift the show's tone completely. He delivered hard, painful news with a calm that gave viewers something to hold on to. He covered the O.J. Simpson trial. He interviewed presidents and world leaders. He was everywhere NBC needed him to be. For 20 years, he earned between $20 and $25 million a year. He was, by any measure, one of the most powerful people in American television. Before the fall, there was the rise of Matt from childhood to stardom. And this rise was really impressive. No question about that. Matt Lauer was born on the 30th of December, 1957 in New York City. His father worked as an executive at a bicycle company and came from Romanian Jewish roots. His mother had been a model and ran her own boutique. Right from the start, Matt was shaped by two very different worlds. One built on hard work and immigrant values, the other on image and public presence. That combination would later define everything about him. His grandfather was a professional singer during the golden age of music. Young Matt used to watch him perform. He was not just watching for fun. He was studying, learning how to command a room, how to hold an audience, how to make people feel like you belong to them. Those lessons stayed with him long before he ever stepped in front of a camera. In the late 1970s, Matt enrolled at Ohio University to study communications. But in 1979, with just 4 credits left before graduation, he walked away. He did not want a diploma. He wanted real experience. His first job was as a news producer at a small station in West Virginia. But within a year, he was already on camera with his own segment. He was 22 years old at the time. That early speed told you everything about the man. He did not wait for permission. He moved. Through the 1980s, he bounced between cities, Richmond, Providence, and finally New York, co-hosting a show called PM Magazine. He adjusted to each city, learned what each audience wanted, and got sharper every time. By 1986, he landed a national show on ABC alongside Robin Leach. It did not last long, but it put his face in front of the whole country. By the late 80s, he was working in multiple cities at the same time, juggling gigs in Philadelphia and Boston, while also reporting for ESPN and HBO. People in the industry joked that he lived at the airport. But that grind built him a reputation as someone who could do everything: news, sports, and entertainment, and to do it well. By 1992, after a rough patch with no steady job and almost no money, NBC gave him a lifeline. He joined a local NBC show and, within a year, was promoted. By 1994, he was the full-time news anchor for The Today Show. Nearly 20 years passed after he left school. Then, in 1997, at 39 years old, with his career at its peak, he quietly went back. The university's president invited him not just to complete his degree, but to deliver the commencement speech to the graduating class. Rather than sitting through traditional classes, he wrote a paper connecting his television career to what he had originally studied. That summer, he crossed the stage with the class of 1997, nearly 2 decades after he should have. He later said that moment gave him more personal pride than almost anything else he had achieved professionally. 2 years later, Ohio University's Alumni Association awarded him their Medal of Merit for the inspiration he gave to others who had started late or walked away and came back. It was a genuinely good story, and one of the few uncomplicated ones attached to his name. But with the medals and career growth, Matt Lauer was not just hiding things at work. He was hiding things at home, too. The marriage that looked perfect and wasn't. In July 1997, Matt Lauer went on a blind date and met Annette Roque, a Dutch model who worked under the name Jade and had modeled for major international brands. 5 months later, they were married. One small detail Lauer admitted publicly was that he did not feel an instant spark with Annette on their first blind date. It took nearly 2 months before they even kissed. Then, once they moved forward, they moved extremely fast, engaged and married within 5 months of that first date. Whether that speed was passion or poor judgment is a question only he can answer. By any outside standard, they looked like the perfect pair. America's most trusted morning anchor and a stunning European model. They had 3 children together. A son, Jack Matthew, born in June 2001. A daughter, Romy, was born in October 2003. And their youngest, Thais, was born in November 2006. Matt talked publicly about loving the quiet moments, family dinners, school milestones, and raising kids together. It sounded genuine, but somehow it was not the full picture, not even close. In 2006, while Annette was pregnant with their 3rd child, she filed for divorce. The allegations she made were not minor. She accused him of mental mistreatment, emotional distress, humiliation, and controlling behavior. She described extreme anger and hostility. She said he tried to control even the smallest decisions in their daily lives. This was the same man who smiled warmly at America every morning. The same man viewers invited into their homes as a trusted friend. The gap between the public image and the private reality was great. Then, just weeks after filing, Annette withdrew the divorce petition. They went to counseling. They stayed together publicly for another 10 years. Friends who knew them said that while they appeared to be a couple at events, they were often living very separate lives. The reconciliation preserved his image, unknown to many that it did not fix the problem. When the scandal finally broke in 2017, Annette separated from him almost immediately. The divorce took nearly 2 years and became final on the 7th of September, 2019. She reportedly walked away with up to $20 million in assets, including full ownership of their horse farm. And surprisingly, he agreed to all her terms without an issue. What is clear is that the foundation was already unsteady long before anyone outside the marriage could see it. 2 years after the firing, family friend Hillary Gumbel gave a rare update on Matt Lauer's children. In December 2019, she said Jack, Romy, and Thais were doing much better compared to the peak period of Matt's firing. While the public focused on the scandal, the children were dealing with the consequences in private. They did not choose any of it. One day, their father was on television every morning. The next day, he was the center of a national controversy. For his sake, and that of his children, over time, Matt had to live his life away from cameras and headlines, and here's how everything adjusted quietly. The Disappearance. Life after the fall. After the firing, Matt Lauer did not speak publicly. By 2018, his circle had shrunk. Friends who used to contact him regularly stopped reaching out. Reports from people around him suggested he rarely spoke to anyone outside his immediate family. He moved fully into private life at his estate in the Hamptons. Strongheart Manor was a waterfront property he bought from actor Richard Gere in 2016 for $36.5 million. It had 12 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, over 14,000 square feet, a tea house by the water, and a heated pool. It was built for isolation as much as comfort. After the scandal, it became his main environment. He stayed there most of the time. Occasionally, people saw him in nearby routines like school drop-offs or quick errands. He did not engage in public interaction. He kept movements minimal and predictable. He avoided attention. At one point, he listed the property for $44.8 million. It remained unsold for years before finally selling in 2022 for $40.9 million. His name returned to public discussion in October 2019 when journalist Ronan Farrow published a book. The book included detailed allegations from Brooke Neville's about the incident in Sochi during the 2014 Winter Olympics. It was the book that described claims that NBC had handled internal complaints poorly and protected powerful figures. This was what prompted him to dispute parts of the reporting and say the narrative being built around him was incomplete. In 2020, he released a written statement after 2 years of silence. He criticized the reporting and said some details were inaccurate or taken out of context. He also said he had made mistakes during his career regardless. The statement did not change public opinion. By then, multiple accounts and investigations had already shaped how the story was understood. His response became another document in an already closed narrative. After that, he did not return to the media. No interviews followed. No professional comeback was attempted. He stayed in private life, away from television and public attention, with no visible plan to re-enter the industry. So, where is he now? Alive or gone? Matt Lauer now. Here is the part that will bother some people. As of now, Matt Lauer is doing fine financially. Despite everything, the firing, the divorce settlement, the years without working, his net worth remains around $80 million. At the peak of his career, he was earning $25 million a year. Even after giving up an estimated $20 million in the divorce, he still has more money than most people will see in several lifetimes. He has not returned to television. He has not launched any podcast, written a memoir, or tried any kind of public comeback. He does not need to. The money is already there. He lives quietly between the Hamptons and New Zealand. In 2019, not long after his divorce was finalized, he began a relationship with Shamin Abbas, a luxury brand executive and longtime friend. They had known each other for about 20 years before the romance began. Friends describe her as deeply supportive. They travel together and are always out of the public eye. His girlfriend, Shamin Abbas, is a communications and marketing executive who works in the luxury branding industry. She is known for helping high-end companies build strong brand identities and connect with wealthy, exclusive audiences. Abbas has worked in the luxury events and marketing space for many years, building a name around brand strategy, event production, and international lifestyle campaigns. She is known in business circles for her polished professional image and strong connections in the luxury industry. Before being linked to Lauer, she had already established her own identity in the corporate and marketing world. After Lauer stepped away from television, Abbas began appearing alongside him in private settings and occasional public events. This naturally pulled attention toward her, especially because Lauer was still one of the most talked-about media figures in America due to his sudden exit from the Today Show. Some public conversations online tried to interpret her presence in his life through different angles. A few people saw her as part of his attempt to rebuild a quieter, controlled personal life after public collapse. Others questioned whether being connected to such a high-profile former anchor brought increased visibility to her own name in media and business spaces. These remain outside interpretations, not confirmed facts. What is clear is that Abbas maintained her professional background while also keeping her personal life largely private. She rarely gives interviews and avoids public commentary about Lauer or the media attention surrounding him. That silence has only added more curiosity around her role in his post-scandal years. In situations like this, where a public figure steps out of the spotlight after controversy, people around them often become part of the wider story, whether they intend to or not. Abbas, with her business profile and low public presence, became one of those names attached to Lauer's new chapter, mostly through observation rather than direct involvement in the media narrative. However, after years of isolation, Lauer began quietly reconnecting with old friends, sending messages, making calls. People close to him said he seemed more relaxed, spending more time with his children and settling into a routine far removed from the world he used to dominate. One of the clearest signs of this came in 2022, when he and his ex-wife, Annette Roque, were seen together at their daughter Romy's high school graduation. The moment stood out because of everything that had happened before it. They were no longer a couple, but they were present as parents. Reports from the event said they appeared calm and in good spirits, focused only on their daughter and the milestone she had reached. Behind that moment, however, was a different emotional layer. People close to Lauer said he still carried frustration about how everything ended. He was described as angry about the way the industry treated him after his firing, and also about how some people he once considered friends stepped away without explanation. That feeling of distance from former colleagues and the media world stayed with him even after public attention faded. Despite everything, he did not become completely cut off from his past work life. Outside of these moments, Lauer has remained mostly out of public life. He does not appear on television, and he does not participate in media projects. His presence is limited to private events and family occasions. His life is structured around personal relationships rather than professional engagement. Even so, discussions about whether he could ever return to public media have continued in the background. His return to public media: possible or impossible? Over time, he remained on friendly terms with a few former colleagues from the Today Show. These included Meredith Vieira, Savannah Guthrie, Hoda Kotb, and Al Roker. The relationships did not return to what they once were, but they did not fully disappear either. Communication existed in limited, polite ways, mostly tied to shared history rather than current work. One of the most notable moments of contact came in December 2023. Lauer attended a wedding in New York City for Today Show producer Jennifer Long. It was not a media appearance or a public return, but it placed him again in a room with former colleagues. He attended the event with his girlfriend, Shamin Abbas, who accompanied him throughout the evening. The gathering included several familiar faces from his past workplace. Savannah Guthrie, Hoda Kotb, Al Roker, Craig Melvin, and Shayanelle Jones were all present. It was the first time in years that he had been in the same setting as multiple members of the Today Show team since his departure in 2017. According to one insider who spoke during an interview, it was discovered that Lauer spent much of the event introducing his girlfriend to guests. The same source described the atmosphere as calm and polite. There was no tension in visible interactions. People exchanged greetings, spoke briefly, and moved on without anyone trying to tag the past to him. Also, it was revealed that Savannah Guthrie approached Lauer before the ceremony began. She hugged him, and they spoke for a few minutes. The conversation was described as warm and respectful, without conflict or visible discomfort. Hoda Kotb and Al Roker were also said to have interacted with him during the event, and those exchanges were described in similar terms, brief and friendly. In general, the tone of the night was not one of confrontation. It was more like a controlled return to shared history in a setting that required politeness. There was no indication of reconciliation or deeper repair, but also no public tension. A source suggested that his girlfriend, Shamin Abbas, has encouraged the idea that a return might still be possible in some form. She was described as supportive and persistent, someone who believes that public opinion can change over time. The idea she holds is that some public figures have managed second or even third phases of their careers after major setbacks, and that audiences can sometimes be open to giving people another chance. However, that view is not widely shared. Other sources have been far more direct. One industry insider mentioned that no network would currently hire him. The same source said the story surrounding his firing and the allegations against him remains too serious for a professional return to traditional television. They pointed out that his case is still strongly associated with misconduct allegations that have not faded from public memory. That same perspective included a blunt statement that the story resurfaces every year around the anniversary of his firing, but the core issue has not changed in how it is viewed by the industry. The contrast between those two views shows the gap between private encouragement and professional reality. On one side, there is the idea of reinvention. On the other hand, there is the weight of reputation and public record. There is also a small group of voices that have defended the idea of a possible return in limited form. Former CNN journalist Don Lemon publicly said that he believes the general public still has some openness toward Lauer, even if institutions do not. He suggested that the resistance may come more from within the media industry than from audiences themselves. In a podcast appearance in early 2025, Lemon said that if Lauer were to return, it would likely have to be outside traditional television. He mentioned digital platforms as a possible space where he could control his own direction without relying on major networks. He added that, in his view, some portion of the public might still be willing to engage with him in that format. Still, even that perspective was careful. It did not suggest a guaranteed comeback. It simply suggested a different environment where control and visibility would be separate from legacy media structures. His story continues in fragments: a graduation, a wedding, a brief comment from a colleague, a passing opinion from someone in the industry. Each moment adds a small piece, but none of them rebuilds the full picture of who he once was in public life. In summary, America trusted this man with their mornings for 20 years. They let him into their homes before they were fully awake. They laughed with him. They cried with him during national troubles. And the whole time, behind the cameras and behind that locked office door, a very different story was playing out. The button under the desk was not just a button. It was the symbol of everything: the power, the secrecy, and the long silence that let it all continue, until the day it couldn't anymore, and Matt faced the greatest tragedy of his life. Today, Matt Lauer's life after television has stayed quiet, shaped by distance from fame and public attention. With Shamin Abbas beside him, he has remained outside the spotlight, avoiding media noise. Their story sits in contrast to his past, marked less by headlines now and more by privacy and silence. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.